So I continue. And then at some point I realize I'm hearing voices behind, like, just voices. I'm like, what is going on? And they just stayed like back there. They just like constant. I'm like, for miles, right? I'm like, my God, what is this? And then it was at the first aid station that was past, it was like 5 or 6 miles in, that I learned that those were sweepers behind me. And I had not trained for that, right? Like, of all the things that I could think of, I had not trained for the idea that there would be a group of people like chasing me, like, which is how it felt, right? It felt, because they were always just back far enough, but I could hear them talking the whole time.
This is your host, Brendan, and you're listening to the Ordinary to Ultra podcast. This podcast is all about helping you run your first ultramarathon and beyond. Tune in to hear new and experienced ultra runners share how they got into running in the first place, what inspired them to run an ultra, training and race day tips, and the gripping story of their first ultramarathon. Prepare yourself to be inspired as you hear stories of grit, sometimes failure, but ultimately triumph when our guests finally cross the finish line. Few clothing companies out there have actual trail runners design their trail running clothes, and Territory Run Co. is the few. Brett Farrell, the founder of Territory Run Co., has been an avid trail runner for over 15 years, and he has designed some of the most thoughtful, functional, and just cool trail running clothing I've ever worn. 5-panel hats, t-shirts, sun shirts, shorts, socks, beanies, and more. They've got it all. I personally, though, love Territory Run Co.'s products for 2 reasons. First, I love their vibe. Most running brands are built around this performance is everything vibe, like work hard, sweat hard. That's fine, but we have enough of those. Territory Run Co. is built around the feeling that you get when you go out and try a new trail for the first time, or when you go on a trail running trip with friends. Second, Territory Run Co. builds their products for trail runners by trail runners. I have 2 of their hats, and they're my go-to running hats because they're incredibly light, super breathable, have super cool outdoorsy patterns, and I can throw them in the washing machine, which is super convenient. But what I love most about them is they have a little loop that goes around that floppy strap in the back of the hat that keeps it from flopping in front of your face if you're wearing it backwards, which is fantastic. Anyway, if y'all are in the market for some trail running hats or clothing, go check out Territory Run Co. And lucky for you, Brett has hooked me up with a coupon code for the listeners of this podcast. So head over to territoryrun.co and use the code ordinary to ultra 20 to get 20% off your first order. Both the website and the code are listed in the show notes of this episode. So go down to the show notes, copy the code, tap the link, and get some sick gear. All right. Thanks for listening. Now back to the show. Hey, Colleen. Thanks so much for being here today. I'm super excited to hear your story today. You've been following the podcast and been in our Facebook group for a while, and I'm super excited to dive into your first 50K story today. Colleen, to kick things off, would you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself, like how old you are, where you're living, about your family a little bit, maybe what you do, that sort of thing?
Sure. 49. Jamestown, Dakota. Husband and 2 teen boys, 16 and 13. So pretty busy, but past the weed stage of children. So
yeah,
I am a mental health counselor, and I work for myself. I have a private practice.
That's legit. So you said offline, you're in your office right now. You're just in your home office?
No, I have a separate office. Yep.
Separate office. Okay.
Yep. Kids are at home, in the summers. So for HIPAA, I cannot risk, violating confidentiality, and I don't want
Yes.
interruptions. So yeah, I thought this would be a good space for this as well.
Nice.
For the same reasons,
nice.
no interruptions.
Yeah, that is the problem of remote work, is that my child, in the middle of me I work remote, so she'll just start banging on the door for, whatever reason, and, I'm in a meeting, and
Yeah, so
luckily I've got
you're in
noise
your
canceling, but
home suite then. Yeah.
yeah. Yep, this is my home office. Yeah, so I get that. Having that separation is nice, but also I don't have to drive, which is really convenient. But anyway,
That is, but this is a small town, 15,000 people, so my drive
Mm,
is 5 minutes.
nice.
Yeah.
You could just run to your office
I,
if you really
I,
want
I could, but there's no shower facility here that I'm aware of.
it.
So
Yeah, okay, yeah, I get that. Yeah, that's my question for people who do that. It's like they must have showers, or they're
they
just not
must.
stinky.
What
You
wet
just don't stink.
wipes could work? Yeah.
Yeah, wipes. That is how I do it when I go camping. Um, nice. Well, thanks for giving us an intro about who you are. Um, before we get into things, you mentioned you have a husband and two kids, two boys, you said,
Two
right?
boys,
Yeah,
teens.
they're teens. Are any of them into running as well, or is it just
Oh
you? Are you the
man,
solo?
I wish
Yeah.
they they do tennis. My one son is at tennis right now.
That's
He
awesome.
bikes there. So my older son is taller than me. He's tall, thin. He's got the runner's build, but he has no interest. My younger child, he'll do it if he has to. My husband actually, oh man, I can't believe I'm saying this on here. He bribed him to get exercise. So he's like, if you get 10 miles, in the summer, like we'll pay you. I did not, like, he already offered that. I did not, I don't really endorse bribing your children exercise. But that motivated my son big time. He had all these things he wanted to get to improve his gaming system. So he's like, yeah. So
Yeah.
a couple weekends ago, he joined me on a 10-miler trail. And that kid, that little twerp, he passed me. He he was just going to hike it, and he had a regular day pack, and he ended up jogging the majority of it.
Dang.
With no
Kids.
no right, kids are like, oh, that's
No
so
fair.
unfair.
Seriously, I've got a youth group, and I keep thinking I should get these kids out, and then I go, they'll probably destroy me because
Probably.
kids. Like I just actually went on a 20-mile hike in the Tetons. We just did a hike, no running. But yeah, we had an 18-year-old with us, and he just was cruising the whole time.
Oh,
I have my poles out. I'm like, doing the uphill grind because it was like 4,000 feet of climbing, and he was just like prancing around like a deer. It's like, what, dude?
I love that.
What is this?
Remember the days. But you're young still.
I know,
right?
but I'm only 27, but
Oh
still
my
there's an
God.
energy difference. Like, dang.
Yeah.
It's
There
crazy.
is.
Well, good for you getting them out there. I mean, hey, my sister will probably never listen to this, but my sister had also been bribed throughout childhood to do workouts and stuff. I think there was some bribing with other rewards. Do what you got to do.
I guess.
She
I
needed
mean,
it, so
they don't require it for weightlifting or playing other things. It's just
yeah,
running. Just the
just
thing their
running.
mom
Okay.
loves to go do.
Well, as long as they have something that's not sitting inside.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gotta get out, touch some grass.
Touch some grass. Seriously. Well, cool. Colleen, let's get into it. So, when did you start running and why?
Okay. So, I was a very active child, and I pretty much didn't walk in the house. I ran in the house, and I'm sure I drove my family bonkers. Possibly would have been medicated, if it were a different time or era.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was definitely a thing. I love to be outside. And so I was just always running. We grew up always hiking. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. So I really enjoyed your last episode. I grew up in Portland. And so
Oh, nice.
hiking was just in the DNA, camping, hiking. It's what you did on the weekend. And sometimes when you're hiking, I didn't have good shoes. I didn't have water, didn't have snacks. But you would hike up, jog down. It's just what active kids do. So, but the running. So I did play sports. I did track a couple years in high school. Wasn't great at it. That introduced me more to the formal concept of jogging, running. And then my first career, I did outdoor field work. So I would jog to keep in shape. But that was, 20 to 20 minutes of jogging. It was like basically go as hard as you can until you can't jog anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't until after I had much later, a lot of life changes, that I took up actual running and distance running. And that was in my 30s. I'd had 2 kids. It was after the second child. We had lived overseas a couple of years. We'd moved back. And that's when I started actually like jogging for its own sake, not for any purpose other than for getting a break from being a stay-home mom. So that's really when that adventure started. So I would say it's only been about 12 years of really increasing distances and going into events. When I was younger in my 20s, I just, even though they say running is not an expensive sport, if you're truly broke ass, right, to sign up for an event, like $60, I'm not going to pay that, like who's going to pay that? So to me, I would jog, but exercise was for fitness. It wasn't really for its own means and purpose necessarily.
Mm-hmm. Solid. So you've been running like all over, like throughout your life.
Yeah.
But at different like intensities and for different reasons.
Yeah, totally. Because I was a soccer player as a kid, so I love soccer. But that was more sprint running, totally different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did soccer too. Yeah, and I never really loved, maybe in high school I sort of but growing up I didn't really like soccer. Like, yeah, all the sprinting, I didn't condition myself. Like, I wasn't on a really pro team, so we didn't do a lot of like running outside of practice. It was just like show up and run, and it was exhausting because like you're doing the sprints, like, as a forward or a midfielder. Like, that was the worst because midfielders are just all over the place.
I love that was my jam.
You liked midfield?
Yeah.
I was
wings.
Defense. Because I was like, I like it back here. I can kick it real hard, get it to the forwards, and stand around
brave.
for a little
while. You have
while.
to have courage. Defense takes courage.
Maybe, yeah, got to go run at them, but less running. Yeah, so I ended up being defense a lot. But anyway, interesting. So the last 12 years, and you've been running. You started running to get out and get out of the house, maybe release, since you're a mom and you're just running 24/7 for your kids. Like,
well, I felt after the second child, I felt really out of shape, and I felt just blah. And we, like I said, we had done a major move back, and we moved to Eastern Oregon, really, really tiny town of Burns, really beautiful there. But we were renting this big old farmhouse, and, I had a toddler and an infant. And that first winter, it was 2011, I started just jogging loops in the house, like through the kitchen, the living room, like I could just do, and then I'd go up and down the stairs. And And that was kind of the very beginning of that journey. And then when the weather, get past the winter, I remember the first time I got outside for an outdoor jog, it felt like, and the women who've had babies may understand this if it wasn't a C-section, but I felt like my insides were going to fall to my outside. I just felt slow, heavy, just uncomfortable, but also determined. It's like, all right, I want to feel like myself again. So that just very gradually worked my way up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my wife would concur.
So how old is your child?
2.5, and we are about to have another.
Oh my gosh. Awesome.
Within the month.
Awesome.
Yeah. So she totally felt that way though. Like, keep it real chill because your organs are like getting back into place.
It was even more so after the second one. The first one, the recovery was a little easier. Second time, I was just like, whoa. And my grandmother had 9. I'm like, heck no.
Whoa.
I don't even get it. I don't know how.
That's incredible. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my grandparents, my dad's side, I think they had 7 kids, and then one of their kids had 8 kids. It's a lot of kids. That's a whole nother thing. I mean, I'd love to chat with you about why you chose 2, or ended up with 2 kids. But I think that's another podcast. So we'll carry on.
Yes.
I'll ask you offline. Because I personally want to know. But anyway, so you were jogging around the house, and this was like in 2011, you said. So yeah. Mm-hmm. When did you sign up for? I mean, when did you sign up for your first event? And
finally decided I could pay to.
Yeah, because I get that too.
It was a local 5K in Burns.
Yeah.
And
cool.
It was just, I did it with a friend, and there was no goal. But I remember at the end feeling like I could have jogged that. I could have gone faster.
Oh, nice.
And so that I think I got a little bit of that bug. Like, I want to do this again and do it faster. I want to beat my time.
And that was probably how long ago?
That would have been 2012. And then either that year or the next year, I did my first 10K in Bend.
Okay.
And nice. It was part trail, part path. And I loved the trail portion. I was just like, oh, this is cool. And I thought it was amazing. There were people like handing you water.
Yeah.
I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah. A little more catered at the trail events.
Well, and just an event at all, even a road event, right? Just the concept that you don't have to carry your own stuff, right? You don't have to worry or think about your thirst or if you need a snack, like they're giving it to you. I just thought it was brilliant.
Yeah. Nice. So you did this 10K, and was that your intro to trail at that point?
Yeah, that was the first little taste of the trail. But keep in mind, I mean, I grew up doing hiking trails, jogging out trails. My first career was working off trail, out in nature, out in forests across the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
So, around that time period, I don't remember when that documentary came out, and I've heard this on one of your other podcasts, the whole Barclay thing, right?
Yeah.
And I got just completely infatuated with the idea because I have the skills. Like I could do off trail. Like I can navigate. I can so I just became really enamored of there being an actual event where people were doing that. Yeah. But that was way far distant from my own. At that time, my own experience. Like it wasn't until 2013 or 13 that I did a 15K.
Hmm.
that and that was the Shamrock Run in Portland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nine
Really
nine mile,
fun.
15K.
What's that?
It's about 9 miles, right? 9 mile,
9.3.
15K. Nice.
Yeah.
Solid.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're up in the distances, it looks like every year. When was your first half?
The next
If you
year,
did one
we
next year.
moved to Olympia. We did like 5 major moves in 8 years. Because we also, from Portland, I moved to Idaho, Southeast Idaho,
Goodness.
Pocatello. So yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of moving. But so we moved
Yeah.
to Olympia, Washington, and did the Lake Fair half as my first half, which is a
Okay.
really beautiful half marathon. If people live in the area and haven't done it, it's very pretty.
Nice, nice. And throughout this time, as you're up in the distances, you just kind of want to see like how far you can go. What's the
Just
motivation
the
to keep
challenge. I mean,
up in
so I
it?
was still a stay-home mom for the most part, and when my husband would get off work, I would be basically like, "Here's the kid," and I'd be out the door. Like I need a break.
Bye.
So I did it for my sanity, my own mental health, and as I and then I found the Hal Higdon, free training plans. It's like, oh, okay, cool. There's a science to this. Um, and so I've always enjoyed it. I've always been active. I love to be active. So yeah, I just, and Olympia is a beautiful place to be running. We were so lucky. We lived a mile from the Capitol, basically. We lived uphill from it. So I'd get to jog a mile down, do a 5-mile loop around the Capitol Lake, and then home. It's just a beautiful place to run and train, and you could do it all year, which I took for granted. Really took that for granted. So I got really, really, really good shape. 2015, I revisited the Lake Fair half, beat my time, was super psyched. I was probably in the best shape of my life at that point.
That's solid.
Yeah.
That's sweet that you can run all year. Olympia, Washington, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Dang. I didn't know. Yeah, like snow. You don't get much snow.
There was a snowstorm, but it lasts a few days. Everything shuts down. People panic, and
Yeah.
kids are thrilled. You get to, it goes away. There are mornings you might have to wait for some frost to melt, and you do have to cope with the rain. So you learn to layer up with the rain, and you just get practiced at being wet.
Yeah. Jeez, avoiding chafe. Wow.
I didn't. So I didn't. I was pretty slender. Didn't have that issue. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
awesome.
do now.
Because whenever I get wet, like it's over.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's super cool. I guess that's true, huh? My Seattle friends, yeah, we're always like, yeah, you can be out all year, but it's just very rainy in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
Solid. So you did some halves, and when did you ever do a marathon?
I did. So we moved to North Dakota in 2015. My husband got a permanent position, so we were psyched, to finally have get grounded. And so, yeah. Kind of had again, more life transitions, but I entered graduate school 2016, and I kept running again for sanity, for mental health, for managing stress. And so here in this town, I actually did a 8-miler. That's a local trail run. And I was like, oh, it can't be, this is North Dakota. This can't be a big deal, right? Pipestem Creek. Oh my gosh, this trail, it's 8 miles in a very small space that is on a slope, that's on a hill, with a creek at the bottom. It's really pretty. I use it a lot now for training runs, but
Mm-hmm.
it was really tough. It kicked my butt, I was like, oh, okay. You can't just assume something's, that everything's flat or, not going to be challenging. It was a pretty challenge trail. And
Nice.
I think I placed third or something silly because there were so few people in it. Third in my, I want to say like in my age or in my like group, right? Not even for the whole thing, but just in my group.
Sure. That's still awesome.
But it was fun. It was like, oh, okay, this is cool. And then so I started researching other trail runs in North Dakota, and I found the Maah Trail series, which is pretty epic. And at the time I found it, they were only doing ultras. Like, unless you were doing the 100-miler, 70 plus 75-miler, or 50-miler, there were no other events. So I was like, oh, well, shoot. But then they added the marathon, half marathon, 10K, 5K. I believe a 10K also. What year? So I want to say 2020 was my first half marathon during COVID. Yeah, nothing shut down here for COVID practically, by the way. Did that.
Really?
Yep.
That's the place to be, in my opinion. Carry on.
I mean, kind of. I mean, things did. Things were, grocery stores, there was the distance. But I still went to the job that I had at that time and just had to wear face masks and all that. But the runs continued. That wasn't canceled.
Oh, good.
And it's beautiful. The Maah Trail is out of Medora. It's in the North Dakota Badlands. And it's like the Painted Hills in Oregon, or, it's just beautiful. Very pretty landscape. So loved it. And we made it a family trip. Medora's this very quaint, cute tourist town, right, with activities and stuff for families. Plus, it's got the national park right there. So, but so I did it that year, and then I did it again the next year. And then I was like, well, I wanted to up my game. So I decided to sign up for the full marathon the following year. So my first marathon was in 2022. And that took me so long. So that day, they didn't start the marathon till 8 a.m. And it got to, I think it was 98 officially, but I assure you, it was at least 100 on the trail. And it reached that temperature by the time I was about halfway through. And everything slowed down for me, like significantly. There's practically no shade. So that took me so long to survive, to get through, that when I got to the end, I was like, the 50K is only 5 more miles. So surely I could find a 50K somewhere with shade.
Okay.
And be able to do that in that amount of time, because it took me so much longer than it should have, just by hours.
Yeah, and you're thinking it's because that heat was just so unbearable.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people were dropping. I passed people who were in way better fitness, clearly, than me, but they were so affected by the heat that they were struggling.
Yeah. And
as
this was
bad or worse
trail.
than I was. What's that?
And this was trail? This was a trail marathon?
It's trail, yeah.
But open trail.
It's open. It's the Badlands. It's rolling hills, beautiful terrain.
Got it.
It's beautiful. Really. I highly recommend it. They put on a very good event with very generous cutoff times.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness. Yeah. Then you could get your marathon done. They oughta if it's going to be that hot. 8 o'clock.
So notably,
I prefer early.
Yes. So notably, after that year, they start at 6.
Yay.
And I am signed up again. I'm going to do the half in a couple weeks, in a week and a half.
Nice.
And we are starting at 7.
There you go.
Yeah. Much better.
Much better. Yeah. Yeah, I think it was the half that I did just a month ago. It starts at 8 up at Park City, and yeah, it's already like 70 degrees by
Yeah.
8, and it gets to 80 by the time
Yeah. And
you're
aren't the runners
finishing.
all kind
And
of like, okay, we're ready. Come on, let's go. Like,
yeah, oh yeah,
you're
like
there like an hour ahead anyway.
yeah, totally. And I exclusively train in the morning because it's not hot. It's like 50 to 60 degrees when I train usually, which is like perfect. Um, but yeah, but the races, I've got one next week. It's 15 miles straight up a mountain, and it's gonna start at 8. And I'm like, come on,
Come
guys. I'm
on,
like,
guys,
I'm gonna be
right? Yeah.
burning to death.
Oh, nice. Where's
Yeah,
that at?
that's also in Park City. I'm doing a trail series in Park City, Utah that ends in my first 50K. So plug, stay tuned, August or September, you'll hear my story, yeah, of
Cool.
my first 50K. It'll
Oh,
be
that'll be
sweet.
neat.
Yeah. Okay, so you got this marathon done. You're progressing through the distances very traditionally, like how I did too. Some people like skip them all and they're like, I'm doing a 50K right now, or
Yeah, no, I don't have that much confidence.
yeah. Yeah, and that's, thanks for saying that. That's why I've enjoyed progressing, because like I feel 100% confident I can do a 50K, because yeah, you do that marathon and you're like, yeah, I could
Yeah.
totally do 5 more miles.
Yeah, yeah. And to an average person who doesn't run at all, they look at you like you're insane. They're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
5 miles.
Yeah, like I
And you're
can't even
like,
run
I
one
just did
mile.
26, actually closer to 27. 5 more? It's okay. And I wasn't even, let's be fair, I wasn't jogging at the end. I was surviving. I was hiking my ass out of that place. You're enduring, right? And but that's okay. That's what's wonderful about trails is a lot of them are very non-judgmental, right? There's
Yeah.
no um, criteria, I guess, that you're necessarily supposed to look like or be like or act like.
Yes. Yes. I think everyone would agree, like that I've talked to about trail running, like the trail running community is super welcoming and helpful, non-judgmental, and varied. Like, yeah, I think you get into marathons a lot of the time, and I like when I was talking to marathoners, they're all like, "Yeah, I'm shooting for a, you know, sub 3 this time, sub 3 hour marathon." It's like, wow, you're awesome. But
Road races are a totally
road,
different thing. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
totally. I've done a few half here, like I went and did the Fargo half, Fargo mini. Uh, there you almost feel, for me, I feel peer pressure from the crowd.
yeah.
Where they're like, hey, yeah, right. So I'm like, oh crap, I was gonna walk, but now I feel like I have to keep jogging.
Yeah, that's a thing. Yeah, nice thing about the trail, yeah, there's only a crowd at the end, which is kind of when you need it. So,
Yes, yes, for sure.
yeah. Um, cool. So you finished the marathon, and likely, yeah, it sounds like you were ready for that 50K. I have some like smaller questions to ask before we get there though. Like, um, when you train, do you typically run by yourself and do your own thing, or do you have like a group that you run with,
Oh
or
man,
a friend or something,
so
or
yeah, dang it, I'm slow. I am
dang it.
slow. In my best shape, I did a sub 10 minute for the half marathon. I was like 9:45, which for me was awesome, and it was still
That is
middle of the
awesome.
pack. Right, my very very best shape was middle of the pack. So for me right now, not being in my best shape, I'm back of the pack. And I'm okay with that. That's fine. I still enjoy it. I'm not going to stop doing it just because I'm slower. Um,
Hmm.
but that
Good.
does create an issue for finding groups or running with other people. Uh,
Yeah.
that's okay. When I first moved here, I did help get going a running group with a personal trainer, with my personal trainer, physical therapist, not personal trainer.
Okay.
Because she was super into running too, but she turned out to be one of the rabbits, and there was kind of a rabbit pack that formed off and did their thing. They're doing 8-minute miles, and I'm not an 8-minute
God.
miler ever. 8.5 minutes. That's not that's not that's not a pace for me.
Yep.
So I found a couple people that I could do some trails with, and that lasted for a short amount of time. And then that kind of tapered off, but that's fine. It's what it is. I'm no longer, when things shifted with my graduate program, getting my business going finally, I was the only one posting to this Facebook group, and I just kind of let it go. I'm like, I don't have time or energy to try to rally people to get out.
Yep.
So I just did my own thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes effort to get things together. And that is a rough problem.
And it's a small town.
I don't want to run with the 8 mile.
What's that?
I don't want to run with the 8-minute mile people either, Colleen. So
no,
you're good.
Yeah, I used to joke, they were the rabbits and we were the trail turtles. Like,
yeah. Jeez, that's fast though on trail, especially. Oh my gosh.
They were not doing trails typically.
Yeah, road
on the road.
That's still fast on road. Like
they're
pushing for something.
It's fine. I think it's great, but I just didn't have a lot of
different level.
Yeah, it was a lot of variety. This is a small town, so.
Yeah. That's true. Less folk. Well, cool. Thanks for explaining. It's interesting to hear what people do with training with people or going solo. And I think for me, it's like having a mix. I usually probably 80% of the time run by myself. And then there's a group here in Cache Valley that gets together on Mondays. I'll join them sometimes. And then I've got a buddy in my neighborhood that's the hard thing for me is finding the person that is crazy enough to do the really long stuff with you too, because you got to find that other crazy ultra running person.
Yeah, you're right. I actually had someone that we worked at the same place for a while, and she was a runner. I actually helped encourage her to get into running. She did a marathon before I did.
Oh, nice.
She was crazy enough, but sometimes things just taper off. I stopped working at that location, so we just didn't meet up as much, and yeah. But I find too, though, when I'm with someone, I push harder, which isn't necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, you might gas out early.
Mm-hmm. And injury potential. So when I'm alone, if I want to walk, I walk. But I could follow the rhythm of what my body's telling me.
Yeah,
which is nice.
Yeah. I appreciate all this, because I bet there's other people out here that feel similarly. It's hard to find people that will. I mean, everyone's at a different spot. So like when I first started running with a buddy in my neighborhood, he was kicking my butt and he was just going way too fast. We did a trail, like a 4-mile trail run with like 1,000 feet of elevation gain. And he just went straight up. He was just running straight up the mountain. And I was like, dude, I can do that for like 3 minutes and then I need to walk.
Yeah, it's impressive, isn't it? I mean, it's neat that people could do that, but it's not as much fun when it's a struggle. And if you're pushing and pushing, I've had enough injuries that I know now to do whatever I can to avoid injury. It sucks to recover from that. And that means you can't run at all. So that's a lot worse.
Well said. That is super well said. I am scared to do other sports and things in fear that I might injure myself in a way that would stop me from running for a year. Like I have someone in my neighborhood that busted her Achilles and she's gone for a year. Like that just would be the worst.
It would be. I agree.
Ugh. Cool. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I think it's hard to find that person that you can run with. Everyone's at different levels, so it makes sense to do a lot alone. And if you can find that person, then that's great. Now I'm at a better level with this guy in my neighborhood. I may even be pushing him at this point, which is take that. Good feeling. But anyway, so you sign up for this 50K and it's in the same series?
Nope.
Different
50. No. I was seeking shade.
That's
and
right.
I'm from the Pacific Northwest, right? So I just decided to look out west. I was open-minded, but I also, my family's out west. We have friends out west. So I thought, well, we can do a family trip. And I hadn't seen my parents by the time we made the trip, June, this last month. I hadn't seen my parents in a couple of years. So in person, So the event I chose was a Mary's Peak Trail run. It's in Blodgett. It's west of Corvallis, Oregon. I went to Oregon State University in Corvallis, so to me, and I'd been to the top of Mary's Peak, so I was like, yes, Mary's Peak. The thing is, when I found it, so I was like, okay, it would be absolutely beautiful, super challenging. When I looked at the elevation gain, I misread the information. So this is all on me. This is my fault. Ooh. So I saw the part where it showed the main climb, which was like 3,000 feet, right, to get to the peak climb. Yeah. And I thought that was it. Like I thought that was the climb. Yeah. I thought that was the climb. Yeah, no. And so I signed up. Okay, I signed up thinking, well, I could. That's not so far out of the realm of conceivability, right? Like that's not so far. I wanted a challenge, but I didn't want to die. No, I signed up, and then I realized after looking at the map more closely and the elevation gains, that it was more like 6,000 feet.
Dang.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah, it's different.
A little more.
It's a little more.
Changes things by double.
I changed things just a little bit.
Dang. And get an elevation gain where you're at. How is that?
It's it's really hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. So I had to do a lot of training on incline treadmill, and I used a pack. So I used a weighted pack about 25 pounds. Incline treadmill, not jogging, obviously. Okay, don't. And then I also use this stair mill, what Sally McRae likes to call a stair mill. It's a wonderful machine. We have this great activity center here in this town with really good equipment. So I would use the pack on the stair mill to get climbing in. So I gained strength for sure. Did not lose fat. But I gained muscle. Yes, winning.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, it's good that you did something about it because, some people would maybe.
Well, I think it made the difference between completing and not finishing.
Yeah. Which is huge. So thank goodness you did it, right? Like, that's awesome that you did some specific training for those climbs. You made it happen, solution finder, which is awesome. Instead of being like, well, we'll just see how it goes. Like,
I wouldn't have finished. I knew I had to build my leg strength. Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard to do out here. It is really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. The climbing strength. On that note, too, did you follow a specific training regimen? Like you mentioned Hal Higdon earlier. Did you do anything like something like that, or did you just kind of wing it, or what'd you do?
Kind of both. I did look up. I don't remember other ones. I found some other just online resources, and I kind of what I do is I'll look at multiple plans and I'll just plug in and fit in what fits for me. like based on what I know I enjoy doing, like to do, my available time and energy to do it.
Yep.
I learned a long time ago that I could do daily running if they're really short runs, but if I'm training for like a half marathon or longer, honestly, 3 days a week of running is my ideal. And that's way less than pros, right? Like,
Yeah.
so you look at like, I looked at Sally McRae's plan, I signed up for her stuff. I love her energy, but it is more days of running, it's just more than what I was willing to put in and dedicate time to. And just also my energy. I love it, but I wasn't willing to stress myself out to that point to do that much work. Just balance,
Yeah.
right? I wanted to do
Yes.
some hard work for it, but also balance it with days of rest and relaxation.
Yeah. Well said. You said you listened to the last episode with Brett, but yeah, he was like building a house, and you're like, you can't build or like totally renovate a house and run a bunch at the same
No.
time, like competing priorities, and you just make it
Yeah.
work.
Like I work, I still enjoy being engaged with my kids and doing things with them and occasionally with friends. And you can't do everything. You have to pick and choose. So yeah. And it's a significant impact too. If the weekend is half my weekend is dedicated to run and recovery, because I'm slow too, right? So it takes me like twice as long as a really fast athletic person to do the same amount of distance. So yeah.
Yeah, it takes time. I feel that. Thanks for sharing that, because everyone's going to connect with that. It's really hard to look at those professional athletes, and that's why I have this podcast. It's hard to look at the professional athletes and be like, man, I'd like to be like them and like cruise and be that strong, but it's not feasible unless you are running every day and an obscene amount of miles every week, which some people can pull off, if you're single and you're just working, maybe you can pull that off, like, or if that's what you choose to prioritize. It's just,
And that's
how am I going to prioritize it? I get it.
prioritizing it. And really there's some level of, there is a next level of dedication and commitment, right? Because I've listened to Sally too on her podcast, which is great. But just her early morning commitments, her dedication to all the training and still having a family, still doing other things,
Yeah.
I don't have that much energy.
Yeah.
Could
I feel
I?
that.
Possibly. I don't know. But do I want to? Do I need to? It's just what it is. I have my own style and needs and wants. And so I just modify, whatever fits for me is what I decide to go with. And I have been practicing not getting down on myself as much by not meeting goals.
Yeah, goals are good to push, but yeah, like specific goals, like time goals and
Yeah, because even being slow, I still had an idea of what would have been nice to finish in,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So so it's like adjusting expectations based on what reality is.
Mm-hmm.
And learning through experience, and you have to go out and put yourself out there and do it and try it to even know if that goal is even realistic to begin with.
Preach. Yeah, the conundrum with goals that you haven't done before. It's
right.
Like,
yes.
I don't know. I'll put this out there, but I really don't know what it'll be like. Yeah. But yeah, which is why a lot of my goals, and maybe listeners will choose the same route, but a lot of my running goals when it comes to running a distance for the first time is very completion based. Like, do I do it? And then I have a baseline. If I so choose to try for a better time in the future. Now I have a baseline. But
Yeah. And that is really reasonable. It's really reasonable to just hope to finish. And then okay, now I know how to train differently and what to do differently to maybe do that faster. Or maybe I don't want to do that at all and I want to do something else.
Exactly. Yeah. Well said. Righteous. So you've got this 50K, you're modifying a training plan. What kind of miles do you think you're putting in a week at your peak of training?
My longest distance was 22, and it was a combination of trail, road, and the activity center treadmill and stair mill workout.
Wow. All in like one workout, huh?
Yep.
Dang.
And that was my peak. That was the one day. And then I think I did only that week, like 2 other workouts, probably one or 2 other runs that week. As for me, as the distances get farther, I need more recovery time. Like I need 2 full days off.
Yep.
So that just cuts down on all of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I feel that. I get wasted after my hard long runs, and that's another thing I have to consider is like, okay, I'm going to do my hard long run before work on Friday, but then I need to consider that I'm going to be wrecked for the rest of work, so I better have my less hard tasks for Friday, save them for that day. Or if I do it on Saturday, then I'm possibly going to be less present with my family because I'm going to be ouchy.
Yeah, the family does sacrifice. Yeah. I started shifting. I used to historically always do my hard runs on Saturdays, but then my Sundays would be wasted, right? Of just not motivated to do anything.
Yeah.
But it worked out better this training time to train on Sundays, my hard day, because my work is sitting. So I can recover while I'm working. But
same.
At home, there's always home chores and projects. It's physical, right?
Yeah.
So it has worked out better for me to be available on the Saturdays and Fridays. I don't see clients on Fridays. So to do whatever's needed around the home. And then they know my Sunday is just reserved for being out for hours.
Lots of running. That's solid. Thanks for explaining that. So it sounds like you probably got around 30 miles
around that.
That peak week.
Yeah.
Solid.
I've done actually more in the past training for a half just because of more days of running or farther in each day, than the long run. So it's kind of interesting. I didn't do a lot more training for a marathon in the 50K. It just shifted to when the miles were done.
Yeah, longer longs. Cool. So, this Mary's Peak 50K, is that what it was called?
Yep.
So, when was it again?
June 8th.
June 8th. So this happened like just over a month ago.
Yep.
And you mentioned it was 6,000 feet of elevation gain and it's in Oregon.
Yes.
And, okay, let's do this thing. So let's hear the story from in as much detail as you can remember of how that day was, like from when you woke up and how you felt, if you got good sleep. Did you have to, it sounds like you had to fly out or drive, so maybe explain that and all through the event too, like anything you remember in detail that happened during the event, how you felt at different points until you crossed the finish line.
Sure.
Let's hear it all.
Oh boy. Okay, so we flew out as a family to Portland and stayed with my parents a couple nights. And this is a little bit of an aside, but it was a part of the experience as well. my parents are older and my dad is in early dementia. So I knew that would be kind of it takes a different kind of energy, and being in that and really, because 2 years ago, even when I saw them last, that wasn't a diagnosis yet. So the couple, it's kind of emotional, having that. And then we were going to borrow one of their cars that turned out not to have air conditioning. So we ended up instead renting a vehicle, because from the run, we were going to do a whole side trip down to the California redwoods. So did not want a vehicle without AC. It sounds really spoiled, but it's like, if you, in the context of a bigger road trip. Yeah. So went down to Corvallis the night before. The race started at 7:30. And I don't typically sleep well before a run. The nerves, anxiety, but I slept actually pretty okay. Visited with an old friend who's living in Eugene. She came and met the night before, and she came with me to pick up the race packet. And so it was just really neat to be. It's just so beautiful. Just living out here, I miss forests. Big trees. There's big poplars, but not big conifers here. And I miss it. So just being in that, going to Blodgett, picking up the race packet, visiting with her, it was just really amazing. I already was just so happy to be there. And I was just like, you know what? Whatever happens tomorrow, I get to be in this beautiful place. Yeah. Yeah. And then the night before, the food, the breakfast that comes with the hotel, they didn't open till after we had to leave for the run, of course. So, but they were nice, and they arranged that they would make a doggy bag for me, so I could just
nice.
have food and coffee right off in the morning. I'm not a big bagel person. That's my husband and one of my sons. They can eat a bagel every day and be happy. That's not my thing, except for a race. That's the time I love a bagel in the morning. So I had that ready to go. For the Maah, I usually set up like a cold brew in the fridge, mini fridge, the night before. So I have a bagel and cold brew set up. But for this one, I got hot coffee in the morning. Yeah, and I usually the night before I do everything is set up and prepped, even attaching I even attach the the bib to my shirt, try it on, see how things hang. So I'm not fussing with anything in the morning.
Yeah. Smart.
Yeah. So yeah. And we went in the morning. The weather was ideal, cool, 60s, I believe.
Nice.
I had another layer on. And yeah, so gathered. So at that event, they were doing 3 events. They were doing a 50-miler, a 50K, and a 25K. And it had occurred to me to downgrade it to 25K because of that elevation mistake. But part of this was I turned 50 in August. So I wanted to do like a 50 by 50, right?
Of course.
Yeah, of course. Right? It's just, it's a thing.
It is a thing. I think I've had other people on the podcast do the same thing.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, it's a thing. These are milestones of your life. It's just, it's a fun math number, right? Yeah, and frankly, at 25K at that point, I'd done several half marathons that adding only a few more miles wouldn't have been a big enough challenge for me. I wanted something that I could maybe fail at, right? Really push and possibly not succeed. So I just kept my registration anyway. So, but the 50 milers and 50Ks had a lot of the same route, a lot of overlap. It wasn't exactly the same, obviously, because they had to do repeats. They did the peak twice. They had over 10,000 feet elevation, the 50 milers. Yeah, I know,
That's
right?
next level.
Oh, totally. So yes, but they staggered it. So those guys started it, I think, at 6. We started at 7:30, and there were a lot of people. I was amazed at how many people for the 50K. I think there were over 100 that did the 50K,
Wow.
and then the 25Kers they started later, like at 9 or something. But so right off the bat, we get going, and I linger back because I know that I'm going to be back at the pack. And within a mile, I had to stop and pee because of, nerves, and I could tell at that point when you watch the whole crowd go ahead of you, like surge and run, and they're running up the road when it's going on an incline. I'm like, okay, I knew I was last at that point because I watched everybody, go ahead. It was fine, totally fine. I didn't mind. It's beautiful. I was in the forest. I was happy. But then I stopped, take my outer layer off because I had warmed up enough. And when I went to put it in my outer pocket of my vest, the zipper had a kink. Yep. So I couldn't zip it up. I was like, oh, crap. Like I had a kink low enough down and I had stuff in there. Like I had first aid kit. I had, things I didn't want to fall out. But I always carry extra safety pins. Yep. So I got my stuff stuffed in and I pinned it. So it's, at least stay closed.
Gosh.
So I was like, well, thank goodness. But, fussing around and doing that wasted time, obviously, and was super annoying, frustrating. And then so I continue. And then at some point I realize I'm hearing voices behind, like just voices. I'm like, what is going on? And they just stayed like back there. They just like constant. I'm like, for miles, right? I'm like, my God, what is this? Like,
and you don't know how far along you were when that started happening?
Yeah, I heard them within a few miles, very early on. And then it was at the first aid station that was it was like 5 or 6 miles in, that I learned that those were sweepers behind me. And I was so here I am. I'm in this place. It's like beautiful, pristine, mature forests, right? Mary's Peak is a preserve, right? You've got old growth forest on there. It's just really beautiful. I mean, part of the run you're going through young stands and clear cuts, but the majority of it is very beautiful. And when I'm out on trails, mostly I'm out alone. It's very meditative. It's very reflective. It's my church, right? And this one voice in particular was really carrying through the forest, like just really projecting. And I had not trained for that, right? Like of all the things that I could think of, I had not trained for the idea that there would be a group of people like chasing me, like, which is how it felt, right? It felt because they were always just back far enough, but I could hear them talking the whole time. So it was at the point when we were going up the peak, the mountain, up Mary's Peak. It's not really a mountain. It's like a really big hill. Technically a mountain. It's part of the Coast Mountain Range.
Okay.
And we were going up the switchbacks. I had taken the poles out finally, and they got so close that they were like 50 yards or less back, right? They were just close, 3 of them. And I finally stopped and I addressed it because I was so bothered by it. Like, I don't want my whole run to be like this. Like, I did not come here, to have to hear a conversation the whole time and feel hounded, So I did stop and I asked them, I was like, hey, I verified, I was like, hey, are you runners? They're like, no, we're sweepers. I was like, okay, listen, can you give me some breathing room? Right? Can you give me some space? Because I didn't come here to listen to conversation like for 30 miles. I'm a therapist and I get to listen to people talk all day, which I love. But I didn't come here to do this run to listen to people talk the whole time. And they did. They backed off and gave me that space. Thank goodness, because then it got peaceful again. It got to where I can, okay, now I can relax. I can look at the nature and really enjoy it.
Good. Dang. Yeah, that would be annoying. I don't blame you. I'm glad you said something.
Oh man, it would have ruined it for me. It kind of did to a degree. I mean, I'm not. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of a combination of things, but that was a factor. Like, I don't. They seemed nice enough, But it's, I just think it's maybe they just didn't know how that would affect, a slow runner because, I didn't have the energy to chit chat or talk going up, hiking up,
Totally.
The trail. I wouldn't have been able to do that. And so it was just constantly in my mind that they were like, this was a lark for them, right? Like this was like hardly an effort apparently for them. And for me, it was really hard. Like what I was doing is really, really difficult for me physically. And I don't mind that people, I admire and am inspired watching all the 50 milers pass me and come down the trail, which is just full on, really fast. I love it. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. But I didn't like feeling like I was being like almost babysat by people who are more fit, It's like, because they're there for safety, right? They're there to make sure everybody gets off the trail safely. And I just didn't want that in the back of my brain.
Mm-hmm. Totally. So how did the rest of this 50K go?
Yeah, I got to the top and my husband and kids were there, which I love when they come out on a trail and like meet me at some point. It just gives me a boost emotionally. I was really happy to see them. And so they joined me hiking to the very tippy top of the peak. So that was super cool to be there and for them to be there with me. And yeah, by the time I got to the top, my watch told me I had climbed about 4,000 feet. So, and I think I wasn't quite halfway through, or maybe about halfway, So, yeah, I was still feeling pretty optimistic at that point that I would do okay. I was like, well, it's downhill, right? Oh, man. It was still a lot more uphill, a lot ups and downs. So I had a couple more thousand feet of climbing. Yeah, but the time of year in that location was just so beautiful for the wildflowers, all the forest plants, the shrubs, the forbs, everything was flowering. And so actually one of my regrets is I didn't stop more and take more pictures because for the 50K, they had the cutoff be the same as for the 50 milers. So it's super generous, right? So I did have time to actually go even slower and take more time to take pictures. And I kind of wish I had, because I wasn't beating any records, right? Like this was not about that at that point. But I had that kind of that mental pressure of feeling like there were people kind of waiting for me, right? Like there's people who are waiting for me to get done with my race because so I kind of just kept going. But really, really beautiful. The wildflowers were amazing. Yeah, I did fall once. I watched other people trip and fall. But I fell once as well, going up the mountain.
Hmm.
That was concerning because not the fall itself was fine because I didn't. I just you get a little banged up. It was no big deal, a little scraped. But the way I fell, it pulled my right foot down, so my toe was pointing down, and my calf went into an immediate Charlie horse, like really severe Charlie horse. So I am like yelling from the Charlie horse, but people are thinking I'm like hurt from the fall. So I'm like pulling my foot up, and two people stopped there like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I was like, "Leg cramp, leg cramp."
Oh,
Yeah.
that sucks.
That sucked. And then they're like, "You got electrolytes?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm fine. I got the stuff. I'll be fine."
Yeah, I have cramped on the trail. It sucks. Really bad.
I didn't cramp after that. And so I was grateful for that. One of the things I've learned in training out in this environment with less shade, is in learning about myself. I've realized I am not only a heavy sweater, but I push out a lot of salt. And so I have to replace that. And when I discovered salt tabs, that was amazing. And now I do drink the element drink. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Very salty.
Sure is.
Sure
I just
is.
got it too because it seems to be the thing. And yeah, it's incredibly salty. But that's what it's supposed to be.
It's supposed to be, and it's not too sugary, so that's why I like it too, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the drinks are very sugary. I don't need the sugar, I need the salt.
Okay, so you had the cramp, and then I assume you stretched the cramp out, and
Yes.
you were able to get back up and
got back up and kept
again.
going, and was relieved that the soreness dissipated pretty quickly.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's always
it's always a serious concern. When I used to have routine problems with leg cramping at night, it would be so bad that I'd be in pain the whole next day and wouldn't be able to run. So I was pretty worried that was going to be the end of my adventure.
Right.
But I have been managing the salts so much better that I was okay. I was actually okay.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's great. So you took some more salt and you got going again. What happened after that? What things happened as you were getting closer to the finish line?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it was just managing the mindset and kind of the conditions on the trail. As far as just how it was organized, how they set it up. So they set it up to where there was a lot of cross traffic, and so with all the runners coming back the other way, I had to hop off the trail a lot. I would prefer to do another big event where that was not the case, because I was always the one yielding. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's like that I have to stop. I have to move over. And I don't mind that if I'm just out for a hike, but it did I had to do it a lot. It was like, so many people. It was just, I would prefer not to have to do that quite so much. That would be nice. But when they all finally passed and I started to head down off the peak, I was pretty well alone by and large, which I don't mind. I did have a period of overlap there was this gentleman who was a 50 miler, and there was a portion of trail that was overlapping for the course. And he did kind of concern me a little bit because he was questioning if I was on the right trail. And he was like, are you sure you're you're 50K? Are you, this is a 50 mile course? I was like, I'm pretty sure. And now I'm worried. I wasn't worried, but now I'm worried. So I got kind of in my head a little bit, but then I was just like, okay, just make it to the next aid station and it's probably fine. And it was fine. But it was
Good.
interesting. He was expressing that he wasn't sure if he was going to finish his 50 miler or not. He had 14 more miles to go. I hope he did. I don't know if he did, because I started jogging a little and then that inspired him to jog. So then of course he kept jogging. So it's like, okay, bye. Have fun. I hope he finished.
Solid. Yeah, it's good to find those trail buddies for a second. That
for a minute,
yeah.
a little visiting for a minute it's nice. There's camaraderie, and seeing people also struggling, right, and with their own struggles and what's going on for them. Yeah.
Solid. Yeah, is there anything else that happened before you got to the finish line, or if not?
Before the finish line, I saw another 50 miler a gentleman who seemed very, very, very much struggling. It's not funny, but it's also like he seemed to be having a pretty emotional time. And I don't blame a bit, right? Like,
yeah.
And I think it was him I visited briefly with, where he was like, yeah, that's doing the peak a second time was just so unnecessary. Like, you just like, why? Yeah, so I thought that was kind of funny. And then right at the end, it's, you always, no matter how much you've hiked on a run, a trail run, it's fun to finish jogging.
Yeah,
like, there's a feeling of yes. This ended going uphill on the road. I was not jogging that. I didn't have it in me. I couldn't. My brain sent the signals like move faster, and my legs were like, no. No.
No juice. That's how I felt at my marathon. I was like, yeah, we can do this. Let's gun it a little bit. And yeah, setting it down. It was like, no, we're going to keep going the same speed. So we make sure we make it.
Yeah. And that, I kind of love that, right? That's why we do this. I kind of think is to meet those limits, right? Like, where's my limit? When am I going to fail? When do I have to stop?
Yeah. So you're sounds like you're feeling super tired, pretty exhausted at the end of this thing, and you're running up, and it's uphill, which is absolutely terrible. Getting up to the finish line.
Yeah.
How when you did cross the finish line, what was that experience like for you, mentally, emotionally, and physically too? Like, how were you doing in all those respects?
Well, I was relieved to be done, and mentally also just glad to no longer have the feeling of being the kind of a rabbit, like, it's like, okay, just that experience I didn't love. So I was just glad that part of it was done. But I'm seeing my husband, my boys, and I'm always really, really happy to see them. I wasn't as emotional this time. I feel like even though it was really hard and really long, it actually wasn't as hard as my marathon was with all the heat. So it wasn't as emotional, or I wasn't even as exhausted as that.
Wow. Isn't that interesting?
It is interesting, and people, people are like celebrating you, and that's nice. That feels good. But there was no medal, so it's like anticlimactic. You like get across and like, yay! Okay, let's go and get a burrito.
There was no medal? Like, nope. What?
Nope. They had finisher cups for the winners, like the top 3 in age groups, I think.
Yeah.
For the 50 miler. I don't even know if that was for the 50K. It might have been. I don't know.
That's it?
Yeah, we got a t-shirt.
Oh,
But
you got
everybody
the
gets a
t-shirt.
t-shirt. You don't have to finish to wear your t-shirt.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Aw.
my husband's been doing a lot of woodworking, and so
Oh, yeah.
I did ask him to make me like a little something, so I think he's going to make a little memento. For me, it's a memento.
Yeah,
I'm not on the
exactly.
podium. I'm not, this is how,
Yeah. It's to remember a super cool, fun thing you did that you
yeah,
accomplished, especially being your first like ultra marathon. Like that is a
yeah.
bummer that they didn't have anything for finishers. I mean, that was planned, right? That's just not something they did. They just
Apparently
don't
it's
do.
not something they
Apparently
do, and I
not.
didn't realize, now when I look at other race events and they share, oh, here's our finisher
Yeah.
medal, like, oh, now I'm
Yeah.
glad that they
I
do that.
guess I know. I guess I better look out for that.
Yeah,
You think that's
yeah,
a
you
given?
should.
Uh,
I don't care what the design is. I'm just like, okay, there's a token reward.
yes. Man, that's really cool of your husband. Yeah, and that'll be just as cool to have something that you can look to remember
Yeah,
the experience. That's nifty.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I connect with that too, like not always having the glory moment, like you break down in tears and you're crying at the end, like, wow, I did this amazing thing. Like, yeah, it doesn't always feel that way. My marathon, I busted myself like super hard. I didn't break myself. I just like worked really hard. I like
Mhm.
did 9-minute miles almost when I thought I was going to be doing more like 10.
No, that's
And
great.
it was like awesome. I freaking worked so hard, but I didn't feel glorious at the end. I was just tired
Yeah.
and wanted to sit down and eat food. Uh,
Yes,
yeah,
yes, likewise. I was like, okay, hungry.
yeah,
So they did have the burritos. They did have the burrito station. That was super awesome.
yeah. Dang, that's good. Yeah, that's one of the things with the ultra runs. Hopefully, you get the really yummy food on course and after. Those, but the burritos were after.
That was after.
Nice. That's super awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you did it, man. Uh, that was super hard. You did all the elevation gain. You did it.
I did it. I did it. I'd like to do another one. Just something with
Yeah.
less elevation gain. Yeah.
Do you think you'll go closer or travel
So
again?
we do have. I didn't mention this before, but last October I did an aid station for 50K that was here at our local trail system, um, which was so much fun. There were just 8 runners that finished. One dropped out due to cramping, but um, oh, I had a lot of fun. I enjoyed that probably more than some of the runs I've done. It was just neat to see people pushing themselves.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to participate in. I'm volunteering again. It's with End. What is it called? End. I wrote it down. End Racing, Extreme North Dakota, and so they plan these events around the state that are hard. Pretty hardcore. Some ultras and some other various events.
Hmm.
So our local person is doing a backyard ultra, and
Ooh.
so I'm going to volunteer for that and help out with that. And then he's also doing the 50K again in October. I don't know if I'm going to volunteer. I'm not going to run it. These are trails that I train on a lot.
Mm.
Just loses some of the. It's like I know them really well. I don't necessarily
Yeah.
want to do 30 miles on them.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, doing something new. That is part of the fun. It's like this is a new place, a new adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's
Yeah.
a place you're familiar with that you love. That's beautiful, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Perks to both. get the new adventure if you go somewhere new, or you have that familiarity and you know exactly what you're getting into by it being local. There's perks. So aside from this volunteer thing you're going to do, so you've ran your first 50K. Do you have ideas, thoughts, plans, dreams for the future, where you're going to go?
I'm doing the Maah half marathon again here in a week and a half. It's always the last weekend of July. They put on a really good event, I have to say. The attitude is just amazing. Their cutoff time is basically a day and a half. They're like, our cutoff time is the same as for the 108 miler or whatever it is.
That's awesome.
So as long as you do your 5K within a day and a half, you're good. That's kind of the mentality. So you get truly a big mix of athleticism, right? You get the very competitive, fast people. And then you get people like me and even slower, you get the whole range of ages. So I really enjoy doing the event. It's a very well supported with volunteers. And at the end they have a beer garden thing, it's fun.
Oh, that's sweet.
So I'm going to revisit that just for fun. Some families driving out and meeting me and my older son there. So just to spend time in Medora. And
Solid.
Yeah. But besides that, I would like to revisit that marathon next year, 2025, and do better on time. And with 2 hours earlier in the morning, I feel like I can.
Right?
Yeah. So I want to revisit that. And then I don't know about a 50K next year, but sometime in the next few years, I would like to do another 50K. Awesome. I don't know where, but somewhere that's more like the Maah, but with shade. Rolling hills, rolling topography. I don't want it totally flat, but I don't want to climb a mountain either.
Yeah, seriously. Well, maybe you could come out to Utah and run the one that I'm doing. I think it's got climbing. I think it's about 3,500 feet of elevation gain. But it's over. Yeah, and it's over several smaller climbs. Like nice. It doesn't go up a mountain. It kind of like follows the side of the mountain, like through a range.
Yeah, undulating. I think that's ideal.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds really.
I look forward to it. Yeah, that one's the Mid Mountain 50K. Yeah, it's in Park City.
Park City. Okay. But yours is in August.
It's in August, yeah, and there are other options too in Utah, though. Obviously, all over the place. But there's a Antelope Island 50K, and that one's got like very little elevation gain, probably around 1,000.
And there's some forests.
No, so that one's not as pretty. Okay. The Mid Mountain one's going to be pretty, but the Antelope Island one's going to be maybe a little more barren.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
after experiencing over 26 miles of almost no shade, like there has to be some decent shade now.
Okay, right? The Mid Mountain will be that. I was gonna mention Moab to you, but there's not going to be shade in Moab.
No, thank you.
It's going to be really cool. It's nice red rock desert stuff, but no shade.
No, I don't. So heat really affects me a lot, and it just I'm already slow, and I slow way down.
Yeah, It is difficult. I mean, I don't even know to the full extent of how it'll be. I don't run much in the heat. I've done a little bit in the heat, but I do mostly do the mornings when it's not hot. So I'll probably regret that a little bit when I go into the 50K, because I know it'll extend to like I'll probably be finishing between 11 and 12 or something in the afternoon. We get into 80 probably, and a little hot. I don't know. We'll see.
I would encourage you to get out on some, like yesterday I did 4 miles and 80 some. It's helpful.
And I'll be sweating more. Probably need more electrolytes at that point. I don't know.
You do. But that's the practice, right? So, and it's a mindset too. Like, what happens to your mind when you feel the
Yes.
overheating and
Yeah. I'll let you know. Listen to the podcast
yes, I
episode in
will.
September. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing your story, Colleen. I
Yeah, you're
appreciate
welcome.
having
Thanks
you
for having
on.
me.
I appreciate having more women on, to represent, especially moms, like, yeah, let's have, I love that, whether you're a guy, a lady, we all have different things going on in our lives. Like, you're a mom, and it's maybe hard to like fit things in as a mom and make things happen. And, you know, I'm a working guy, so it's hard. You have to fit it around work, but it's just really fun to get everyone's point of view. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing your point of view, um, and your experience. Um, my last question is, if you, rather, there are lots of people listening to this podcast who are new, like you and I used to be or are. Maybe they haven't run their first 50K yet. They haven't signed up yet even, but they're thinking about it. What final advice would you give those newer folks that are getting into ultra running?
Hmm. Man.
Take a second. No worries.
Yeah. Okay.
This is really important.
I would say try to have fun. I think we could just take it so seriously. And part of that, I know I could be very self-critical, like, oh, dang, I didn't do this, or I didn't make that, or I couldn't get as many miles in as I had planned this week. And I think just remembering that this is probably for enjoyment, hopefully, right? And not because you're going to win like some large amount of money at the end. So I have tried to adopt that more even in my training runs, right? Like, I stop and take photos of insects or whatever. Like, just try to have fun, enjoy it. Try to practice all the things, the advice on using all the tools ahead of time. Do that. Definitely do that. Yeah, and something's going to crop up, like for me with the sweepers, that you've never encountered before, and you're going to have to manage that. But that's part of it.
Yeah, well said. The things you don't plan for, it's going to happen. Something unplanned is going to happen. So
Yep.
prepare and decide now if you're going to make it work or not. Some of those things, you may have to stop, but that's okay too. Got plenty of people who've come on and shared their DNF stories, and that's just part of the journey.
Knocking on wood, I would like not to have to do that, but maybe it's showing I'm not pushing hard enough, right? Maybe I should be aiming for a 50 miler so I have that experience of failing, right? And that's not a bad thing. Yeah.
Yeah, do it on that 100-miler one where you can take all the day to do it.
I love the idea of that. My mindset's not there yet. I would love to evolve in my mindset. I think I'm not old
Totally.
enough, Brendan. I'm
Old
only
enough.
49.
You gotta
I think I
be
need
60th birthday, do a 50
yes.
miler, next big milestone.
It could be. That could be.
Could be. I feel that though. I personally look at the 50 miler and I go, I have no idea if I could do that or how. Yeah, but I'm going to do the 50K, and that will
Yes.
help me determine if that's something I want to do or not. So stay tuned, everyone, to hear if Colleen does a 50 miler someday. We'll have her back on, and same
Nice.
here. We'll see what I do. But thanks for your advice. Thanks for your story. I appreciate you so much for coming on. And
You're welcome. It was fun.
yeah. And final thing, listeners, I'm still doing that collaboration with Territory Run Co. They we have a deal going on where you can get 20% off on Territory Run Co. products if you use the code Ordinary to Ultra 20. So you can check out the show notes and go visit his website and use that code to get a sweet discount on some sweet running hats or gear. But hey, your host Brendan here. I just wanted to thank you personally for listening to today's episode. As someone preparing for my own first ultramarathon, I've found these conversations to be super valuable, and I hope they are for you as well. Whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or somewhere else, make sure to follow or subscribe so you know when the next episode comes out. Also, make sure you check out the show notes of this episode. There's a link to sign up for the Ordinary to Ultra email newsletter, to join our Facebook and Strava groups where you can meet other people striving to run their first ultra marathon, and see any links that our guests may have provided as well. Thanks again, and we'll catch you in the next episode.